Welcome, all pregnant families, midwives, or birth workers. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we will be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Today in the podcast, we are looking at what new mothers need when their babies arrive. It is a precious time and we don't always appreciate what the new mother is going through. Today, I will help you to see it through the lens of the changes that take place when we go from the woman into the mother. A new part of you is emerging and it ultimately becomes an expansion of self, or as I like to call her, the butterfly. Enjoy.
Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. Most of the stories you will hear through this podcast are graduates of the Transform Your Birth workshop held in Canberra. Our Transform Your Birth Today course is now available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and includes all the wonderful wisdom of this course and live weekly catch-ups when you need it with our host, Tracy. For a little taste, please accept our pregnancy gift offer, which contains free the first few lessons and some essential wisdom for pregnancy. The link can be found in these show notes or visit transformyourbirth.com.au. And now for the episode.
Hello, everyone. Good to have you again with me this week in the Transform Your Birth podcast. This week, I'm going to talk about what you're going to need when baby lands. Last week, we talked about what baby needs, and this week, it's about you. Now, no one can really tell you what it's going to be like because every experience is different. And I'd be careful about listening to people who are too negative about it or even too positive. It's really interesting, I've watched, thousands of women make these transitions. And when people's expectations are low, they're often in for a pleasant surprise. And then if they're high, they're often in for a bit of a low. And it's a path you have to walk. Every path is different. Now, one of the biggest things that's going to influence your experience of this is the type of birth that you had and your recovery. And of course, this is going to be different for everyone because every birth is different. Some women need more support in their recovery. There's healing to be done, no lifting, driving, all sorts of things. And then for other women, they can bounce quite quickly. But it is your path and you have to walk your path. So whatever it is that your birth has taken you through, it's so important you create the time and the space to just be, because not only are you recovering, you're getting used to the needs of a new baby, which are very, very intense. Now, in many, many traditions, there's a period of time, they call it the first 40 days. Asian traditions, Indian traditions, very strong on this. And they've managed to keep the wisdom and the understanding of what new parents need through this time. In our culture, we tend to be a little bit more eclectic and we've lost some of these traditions, but it's certainly something worth thinking about. Now, typically in those first 40 days, they keep the parents, or particularly the birthing mum, very low key, to not necessarily be, out and about too quickly, that your body needs to rest. It's coming into a pre-pregnant state again, but also a lactating state. So your hormones are doing a lot of different things. And the more energy you're exerting, the harder it is for your body to recover. So rest is actually really important. The other thing with that is really nutritious food, okay? It can be very easy to slip into the habit, when you're pregnant, I can eat anything, or some women can't, they can barely eat anything. And whilst pregnancy hunger can be pretty fierce, lactation hunger is a whole other level. And you're going to want to eat a lot. And if you're not eating food that really nourishes your body, you're putting your body under a lot of stress to make use of the fuel you're giving it as well as recovery. So I would encourage you to do lots of cooking before you have the baby. Pop it in the freezer. Good nourishing food, lots of veggies, whatever form of protein you eat is going to be really important. And getting some of the other roles sorted, whether it be washing walking the dog, getting groceries delivered, whatever you can do to make this low key. I do believe this is a period of time where we do need support. Some families prefer just to, the parents just have that time on their own for a little while, and that's fine while they sort of find their feet. Others are very quick to have people in their space. When I had my babies, my mother moved in and she was fabulous. She'd just take over the kitchen, the laundry, the other kids, and the front door. And I could just focus on the baby, which made things so much better as I was adjusting to life with a brand new baby. So the thing you want to put a little bit of time into is visitors, because one of the things that can happen is people are so excited this baby's arrived, they rock up to your house, or even the hospital room, and if they come to your house, they're like, yeah, I'll have a cup of tea, white with one, give me the baby, I want a nurse, and they sit on your lounge and eat all your food. You don't want that, okay? You've probably done it. I'd probably done it before I had children. It's really hard, particularly if visitors spend long periods of time, because there's so much going on for you getting used to feeding. Now, the feeding regime is the next most important thing that you have to adjust to. Babies' tummies are very tiny, about the size of a large marble, and they metabolize the milk very, very quickly, which means that they need to feed a lot. Now, that means you're going to need to be exposed, because you need to focus on good attachment and making sure Bubby's finding the breast in a way that doesn't create excessive amounts of pain and establishes that feeding supply cycle. So because of that, you need to focus. So if you've got a house full of people, it's not very helpful, okay? It's, unless of course you feel quite comfortable exposing yourself, and that's fine too, but it's just, I'm just warning you, and you're likely to be very, very sensitive. Remember, I said last week, you've got a big amygdala. It's that part of the brain that registers threat. It makes you hypersensitive around that new baby. And so people coming in and grabbing your baby and taking your baby away from you can be very, very triggering. I remember when I had my first son, we had very close family friends who had 3 kids, and we loved them to bits. And they rocked in only days after my oldest Sam was born, and the mother wanted to take him, and she put him on the lounge, and she was doing flash photography, and my whole nervous system started to freak out. And I grabbed my baby, walked into the bedroom and slammed the door. I just couldn't bring myself even to be polite, to say, look, I'm feeling a bit tired, might need to wind this up. I just took off because it just triggered me enormously. And it was a real surprise for me. I didn't expect to feel that sensitive, particularly towards people that I knew. And so that's the other thing that tends to happen too, is relationships change. Prior to having a baby, I didn't give my mother a second thought. I was off doing life, being in having adventures and doing my own thing. When I had my first son, all I wanted was my mother. New mothers often need mothering. And that might be your own mother, or it might be other people in your community who come in and nurture you, look after you, and they're able to hand it over and for it to be about you and the baby rather than themselves, which, can be a bit tricky sometimes. But it is important to realize that, relationships do change. So part of this journey is going to invite you to ask for what you need. Now, that's something often us women, particularly modern independent women, struggle to do. We don't like to be seen to be of need. But if ever there was a time to ask for what you need, it's when you've got a new baby, because your learning curve is very, very steep and very, very high. And so being able to say, just tell me I'm doing a good job. Just tell me how beautiful my baby is. Could you just rub my feet? My feet are aching. This is the sort of things when you're surrounded by really good people that can happen. And it's precious. It's very, very precious time. It's a very sacred time. So what new mothers don't need is uncalled for advice. Okay. And that's going to come at you thick and fast. Everybody's got an opinion. If your baby's crying, you'll get people say, oh, your baby looks like it's tired, or it's hungry, or it's this, or it's that. And that becomes noise to your nervous system who's trying to attune to this baby. And so we don't need people around us telling us what we need. We need to focus on the baby. We need to be undisturbed. And people coming also between the new mother and the baby, even grandparents, even people close to that family, depending on how they do it, particularly if they take the baby and walk off, can also be very triggering for you. So you let people know, please don't take my baby away from me. I need to be close. If that's how you feel, we're all very different. But it is a period of time where there's great sensitivity, and culturally we don't always recognize that. So people often can do things that cause the new mother to be quite distressed. It's the other things that we don't need is too much activity or expectation to get back into life too quickly. Look at that 40-day period. That's a significant amount of time. I remember, I think it was only days after one of my sons, I think Jacob, was born, and Mum was there and the other kids were fine. And I thought, I'll just go down to the supermarket and grab a couple of things that I wanted. And I drove down to the local shops. I got out of the car. I walked up to the supermarket. The doors opened. The music was loud. The lights were blaring. There was people everywhere. And I just realized in that moment I couldn't go in. It was too much for my system. So I let the doors close, got back in the car and went home, and then proceeded to get somebody else to get whatever it is I wanted. I just couldn't bring myself to be in there. So no expectations on yourself to be out there doing life again. Okay, you've really got to realize what a sacred time this is. The other things people don't need when they've had a new baby is visitors sitting on your lounge for hours eating all your food. You don't need that. We don't need comments about how our bodies look. Okay, because our bodies are having to adjust after being pregnant and giving birth. We don't need pressure to get our bodies back. That's just ridiculous. We have to respect the enormous job our bodies do, not just growing a baby, birthing a baby, but also lactating and feeding that baby. So no pressure to get back to normal, none whatsoever. Give yourself a year to let your body just readjust. Feed yourself good food. When you feel ready, start to bring back exercise, but only when you feel ready, and not to put pressure on yourself too soon for all of that to happen. Now, I'm going to give you a lovely little metaphor that I often give my new mothers, which really helps them to understand how discombobulating this period of time can be. And it's a metaphor that's probably been overused in many ways, but I really think it works in this instance. And it's the metaphor of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Prior to you having a baby, you could do what you wanted when you wanted. If you were hungry, you ate. If you were tired, you slept. That's like being a caterpillar. The caterpillar can really only see what's in front of it, goes about its day, sits in the sun for a while, maybe it has a rest. That's our lives prior to children. Then we get pregnant. And as that baby grows and we get more heavily pregnant, these internal forces start to change. They start to unlock. And we find ourselves disconnecting. Things we used to care deeply about, for example, our work, all of a sudden our care factors dropped. We want to just hide at home. We want to clean things we normally wouldn't clean. We call this nesting. Okay, it's where you disconnect from the external world because you're bringing your attention more to your internal world, and you know that there's a massive transformation about to come. So we just want to be at home. We don't want to talk to people. We want to potter around. Now, in that space, in many ways, we've wrapped ourselves up in the cocoon. This is what the caterpillar does. It finds somewhere private, wraps itself up in the cocoon. When it does that, it starts to lose all sense of form and structure. It's no longer the caterpillar, not quite the butterfly, but something quite deep and profound is happening. There's a transformative process going on. And that's like the incubation of your motherhood. It's the incubation of you ultimately becoming a butterfly. Now, the process for that caterpillar, or by now, the emergence of the butterfly starts to happen as it starts to break through that cocoon. And I call that childbirth. Childbirth is always intense, doesn't matter what type of birth you have. It's requiring you to break free and stretch your wings. It's in the process of going through birth that you're strengthening your wings as the butterfly. We know that if we come up and open that cocoon for the butterfly, it comes out very limp, and it can take a while, if ever, to strengthen its wings to ultimately fly. So it's the struggle of birth, which is so incredibly intelligent and helpful to break or crack the shell from the woman into the mother. And so as that butterfly emerges and she's strengthened her wings, she starts to fly. And this is the mother. Now, the mother has a huge view of the horizon. She sees the world very, very differently. Things that never used to disturb her all of a sudden disturb her. She's more aware of the cleaning products in her house. She's worried about the state of the planet and the environment. She's looking for dangers to her children and the next generation because she can see more, because she's the butterfly, and she's quite beautiful. But in that early period of mothering, particularly in those first few days and weeks, you can feel a little bit like caterpillar soup. You're not quite the butterfly, and you can't go back to being a caterpillar. So you're sort of in that land that's a little bit of, can feel very, who am I now? What is my identity now? And that transition can feel a little bit overwhelming sometimes. And sometimes you look at your baby and you think you're the butterfly, you think you're the best thing ever. And then other days you think, oh my God, I just want to sleep. And you feel like you want to go back to being a caterpillar. And that's normal too. So one of the things that you can expect when a new baby lands is this feeling of, I'm not quite sure who I am now. Okay. It can feel like a loss of self, but it's not a loss of self. It's a loss of a former life. The self has actually expanded, and you stepping into the butterfly, you being able to really step confidently into being the butterfly, being the mother, is part of your journey. And the journey to confidence comes when you focus on your baby. So it's going to be very easy for you, particularly in your generation, to want to Google things, to want to look for answers outside of yourself. But before you do that, just check in and say, I'm the butterfly now. What's my sense of what my baby's telling me? Because your baby is communicating to you 24/7. Every sound, every movement, every expression is a form of communication. Your job is to learn their language. And by the way, their language is going to change. What worked yesterday may not work today, and something totally different might work next week. But the job of learning your baby's language, attuning to your baby, is the journey that's ahead of you. And it's a very precious journey. And it gets supported when we have people around us who can take care of the other worldly things that we have to deal with, so that we can have the time and the space to just be with our baby and stare at our baby. Your subconscious will pick up a whole lot more information than you're even consciously aware of when you just have that time to be. So one of the things you can look forward to is the timelessness of being with a new baby, particularly when you can extract yourself from the busy worldly things, logistics that we often have to deal with for periods of time to just be. And everything about the journey of having a baby invites us to do exactly that. It's always changing. We're having to roll with it, to adapt, to learn, to accept, to mourn sometimes the loss of being a caterpillar. But ultimately, don't underestimate what you have become in this journey. So I hope that's been really helpful for you. I think it's a precious time and something to look forward to. And I really wish you the very best with this journey. And I'll just say one final thing to wind all of this up. When it comes to having a new baby, we do need community. They always say it takes a village to raise a child. And that's very much behind what we've tried to create here at Transform Parenting, which is a community that people can dip in and out of whenever they want to. We follow people from pregnancy to the first 7 years of a child's life, supporting parents all the way through. But one of the most beautiful things you can do is tap into a mother's group. And we have them here. They're called Thriving as a New Parents. We've got them for mums and we've also got them for dads. And they're beautiful because we have them face to face. So if you live in Canberra, that's wonderful. But we also have the Zoom sessions as well. And I take you through 10 different themes each week around what I know you're going to need moving forward. So if you feel compelled or called, why not check out the website, transformparenting.com.au, and get online, see whether there's a group coming up that's going to be a good time for you, and get in nice and early because we do cap the numbers. We like to create an environment where the mothers really bond and connect and stay connected long after the 10 weeks. So it's something worth looking into, or looking into it in your local area. So lots of love, enjoy this precious time, and thanks again for listening. We'll have more goodness for you next week. Bye for now. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support and grow into your role as a parent. Why not take advantage of a special gift for all pregnant women at transformyourbirth.com.au. Or if you have children, we have a gift for parents also.